Hello, good morning, students. Today we will study the physical properties of non-metals. Okay, last classes we have studied about the physical and chemical properties of metals, and today we will discuss about the physical properties of non-metals. Okay, we have already studied what are non-metals, and today we will discuss physical properties of non-metals. तो फर्स्ट प्रॉपर्टी इज malleability. ठीक है, व्हाट इज malleability? We have already discussed the property of metal elements to draw into a thin sheet. ठीक है, by hammering. अगर किसी metals को या किसी भी element को लोग hammer करते हैं और उसको thin sheet में change कर सकते हैं, तो उस property को बोलते हैं malleability. अब देखो, non metals are not malleable. हम लोग non metal को malleable नहीं कर सकते हैं, ठीक है, but they are brittle. अगर इसको हम हीट करेंगे, तो क्या होगा? ये टूट जाएगा, इट ब्रेक इजीली, है ना? तो देयरफॉर नॉन मेटल्स आर malleable, are not malleable but they are brittle. ठीक है ना? अगर इसको हम हीट करेंगे, हैमर करेंगे, तो वो टूट जाएगा. एग्जांपल तुम्हारा सल्फर हो गया, एग्जांपल सल्फर है, फास्फोरस है. ठीक है, एग्जांपल सल्फर एंड फास्फोरस. Example, sulfur and phosphorus. These are the non-metals which cannot be hammered. ठीक है. Now next property. So usually we have seen that non-metals are non-malleable. Next property is ductility. What is ductility? We have already discussed in our last lecture. What is ductility? The property of elements to draw into a thin wire. ठीक है ना? To draw into thin wire. We have studied in the metals. Metals shows ductility. But in this case, in non-metals are not ductile. हम लोग non-metals को thin wire में convert नहीं कर सकते हैं. Example, सिलिकॉन हो गया, बोरोन हो गया. ठीक है, सिलिकॉन, बोरोन, these are the non-metals which cannot be drawn into thin wire. Okay, so usually you have to learn that non-metals are not ductile. Okay, now next property. Next property is sonorous. What is sonorous? When we hit metals, it produces sound, and this property is called sonorous. And we have discussed that metal shows sonorosity. मतलब when we hammer on metals, it produces sound. मतलब metal shows sonorosity, but non-metals are not sonorous. If we hit non-metals by a hard object, it will not produce any sound. It means they are not sonorous. It will not produce sound when we hit it by a hard object. It means it cannot produce when hit with a hammer. ठीक है? Example, bromine. Bromine is the only non-metal which is present in the liquid form. Fluorine, bromine and fluorine, these are the some non-metals which are non-sonorous. Okay, usually you have to learn non-metals are non-sonorous. It will not produce any sound when we hit it or hammer with a hard object. Now next properties, that is the fourth one. Density. What is density? Mass per unit volume. What is density? Mass per unit volume. This is called density. Mass per unit volume is called density. You have studied in physics also. What is density? I look at you. Say density. Density, it is represented by rho. It is density. Okay, density means mass per unit volume. Okay, so non-metals, we have seen in the metals have high densities. ठीक है ना? But in non-metals generally have low densities. It means metals are usually hard, and that's why they have more densities. But in non-metals they have generally low density. It means they are lighter in वेट. इसका वेट ज्यादा नहीं होगा, और अगर वेट ज्यादा नहीं होगा तो इसका डेंसिटी कम होता है. ठीक है, नॉन मेटल्स आर जनरली लो डेंसिटी. एग्जांपल हमारा हाइड्रोजन, कार्बन, सल्फर. यू कैन राइट सल्फर. एग्जाम्पल सल्फर, ठीक है. These are the some example of nonmetals which have usually low densities. Now next property of nonmetals is melting and boiling point. Melting and boiling point. We had seen in the last video that so metals have usually have high densities and high melting point and high boiling points, but non-metals have low melting and low boiling point. ठीक है, it has low melting and low boiling point. It means that non-metal बहुत जल्दी गर्म हो जाएगा, अब बहुत जल्दी मेल्ट कर जाएगा, पिघल भी जाएगा, ठीक है ना. बहुत कम टेम्परेचर देंगे, बहुत कम हीट देंगे तो वो पिघल जाएगा और वो बॉइलिंग भी जल्दी हो जाता है, ठीक है. तो non-metals have usually low melting and low boiling point. इसका एग्जांपल बताइए. एग्जांपल है ब्रोमीन. ब्रोमीन एक नॉन मेटल है, वो बहुत जल्दी गर्म भी हो जाएगा, बहुत जल्दी मेल्ट भी कर जाता है. फ्लोरीन भी है, ब्रोमीन भी है, ठीक है ना. फास्फोरस भी बोल सकते हैं, फास्फोरस. फास्फोरस भी होता है. So these are the non-metals which have low melting and low boiling point. So you have to remember that non-metals have low melting and low boiling point, but metals have high melting and high boiling point. And now next point. Next chemical physical properties, hardness. Hardness and softness, ठीक है. Non-metals are generally soft. We have seen in case of metals are usually hard, but non-metals are usually soft. Example carbon, phosphorus, or you can say carbon, phosphorus, bromine. These are the non-metals which are very soft and is not hard. Non-metals are usually soft. Example carbon and phosphorus. Now next properties. Next is conductivity. Conductor of heat and electricity. We have seen in case of metals was good conductor of heat and electricity, but in case of non-metals are generally bad conductor. इसका रीजन हम लोग क्लास 10 में पढ़ेंगे, ठीक है. क्यों? ये तुम्हारा हीट और इलेक्ट्रिसिटी को कंडक्ट नहीं करता है. इसका क्यों नहीं करता है तो इसका रीजन हम लोग बाद में पढ़ेंगे. बस अभी हम लोग इतना पढ़ लेंगे कि non-metals are generally bad conductor of heat and electricity. ये तुम्हारा हीट को और इलेक्ट्रिसिटी को कंडक्ट नहीं करता है. एग्जाम्पल आयोडीन and neon. These are the non-metals which does not conduct electricity as well as heat. Now next property. Now there are some exceptions, ठीक है. They belong beside the properties of non-metals. There are some exceptions. There are some non-metals which shows different properties than we have already discussed. Now first exception which are usually asked in the examination, electrical conductivity. We have just told that non-metals are bad conductor of electricity, but carbon in the form of graphite is a non-metal which conduct electricity. कार्बन एक ऐसा non-metal है जो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कंडक्ट करता है, ठीक है ना. जस्ट लाइक मेटल्स. अभी हम क्या बोले थे कि non-metals इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कंडक्ट नहीं करता है, लेकिन कार्बन एक ऐसा non-metal है जो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी को कंडक्ट करेगा, ठीक है ना. दिस आर द एक्सेप्शन. ये इसको फॉलो नहीं करता है, ठीक है ना. यू हैव टू रिमेंबर दिस. कार्बन इज द ओनली non-metals which conduct electricity just like metal. जैसे metal कंडक्ट करता है ना, वैसे कंडक्ट करेगा कार्बन भी, ठीक है. दिस आर द एक्सेप्शन. नाउ सेकंड एक्सेप्शन. लस्टर मीन्स चमकना, ठीक है ना. अगर कोई भी चीज चमक रहा है उसको लस्टर बोलते हैं. वी हैव डिस्कस, हम लोग किए थे मेटल्स में कि मेटल्स आर लस्टरस इन नेचर, बट नॉन मेटल्स आर नॉट लस्टरस. नॉन मेटल चमकता नहीं है, लेकिन आयोडीन एक ऐसा नॉन मेटल है विच आर लस्टरस, है ना. आयोडीन इज अ नॉन मेटल विच लस्टरस हैविंग शाइनिंग सरफेस जस्ट लाइक मेटल्स, ठीक है ना. दिस आर द एक्सेप्शन. आयोडीन इज द एक्सेप्शन इन नॉन मेटल्स. It shows lustrous